Clemson Tigers on the field, trying to get ready for that season opener against a pretty decent opponent. We got Jason Priester here from Clemson Insider to talk some Tigers. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How about you?
I'm good. What was the official first day of fall camp?
Clemson started practice yesterday, which was Thursday. They had their big weigh-in on Wednesday. Everybody checked in on Wednesday, but the actual first day of on-the-field practice yesterday, Thursday. We got to watch about 7 periods. Seemed to be some little bit of cautious optimism out there in that building, man. You know, you look at some of the numbers from the weigh-in the other day, you can tell some of those guys have been really putting in some work over the offseason. A lot of guys looked the part. We'll see how that translates over to the field.
Anything in particular with you being out there, or stuff that you picked up from other colleagues?
You know, I spent a lot of time yesterday watching the freshmen, but one of the first things that you kind of notice is the look of Cade Klubnik. You know, he weighed in at 210. He's added a little bit of bulk. I mean, it's not a ton, but he's added some muscle and some strength. And that was one of the things they wanted to see, was him get a little bit stronger so he could be a little bit more effective in the running game. You know, he looks really good. Those TJ Moore, freshman receiver, just got to campus this summer. He was a summer enrollee, so he wasn't here during the spring. He looks physically ready to go right now. But to me, that one of the biggest things is that offensive line. You know, I talked about people looking the part. They absolutely look the part, man. We'll see what kind of impact Matt Luke can have on that group in his first year. But there's a lot of positive chatter surrounding those guys, or was a lot of positive chatter surrounding those guys coming out of the spring. You hope that carries over into the fall. You know, we'll find out right where they are week 1, that's for sure.
All right, Jason, let's knock out the position battles one by one. Which ones have to be determined?
Center. That you know, you can make the argument that's the biggest one on this team right now. Clemson returns 4 starters along that offensive line, but they lose Will Putnam, who's, you know, their veteran center. Ryan Linthicum is a guy who's been there 3 years. He's kind of patiently waited his turn. He's only played just, I think, like 105 snaps total in his career so far. We got to actually talk to him yesterday after practice, and I remember after spring, Dabo Sweeney named him the starter coming out of the spring, but said he still wanted to see more in the summer. He wanted to see Linthicum, you know, kind of transform his body. You know, they had some goals in place for him, and I think he's done that. He looks really good. Harris Sewell is a sophomore who's kind of competing for that job with Linthicum there. It's been a long time since Clemson's had a started the season with a underclassman winning that job at center. So Sewell's got an uphill battle ahead of him, man, but he's absolutely got the skill set to win that thing. We'll see if Linthicum can hold off the young buck. That's a battle I would expect to last, you know, at least a good portion of fall camp.
Anything else on either side of the ball in regards to jobs?
How about place kicker? That is something Clemson struggled mightily with a season ago. Robert Gunn went into the season, you know, as the guy. It quickly realized that he wasn't. You know, they've got a hot shot freshman in there now, Nolan Hoosier. Those 2 guys are battling it out. Can't say that either one of them absolutely killed it in the parts we got to watch yesterday. Hoosier hit both his field goal attempts from 30. Then he was 1 of 2 from 37, I think it was, and 0 for 1 from 40. So that, talking about a battle that might go on throughout all of fall camp, that could be one. Those guys, by all accounts, had a really good spring, and, you know, we only got to see, you know, just a few kicks in person yesterday. So that's an extremely small sample size. I would be very cautious, you know, against going with that as the narrative. You know, oh man, these guys are going to be terrible. You know, it's the opening day, it's 5 kicks. Let's see where we are 2 weeks from now. But that's a battle that that's going to be an important one. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but field goal kicking cost Clemson at least one game last year. If you've got a reliable kicker, you probably beat Florida State, one of the biggest games of the season. It's going to be imperative that one of those guys steps up and not only just wins that job, but is capable of delivering in the big moments.
Jason Priester talking some Clemson football with us, as he always does. It is theclemsoninsider.com. Check out Jason's work right there. He's made it out to practice and will a number of times, of course, for the rest of August. I know Dabo realizes this. Do the players realize that the national perception of this program is, unlike most programs that would be ranked in the top 10 to 15 in the country, would be, okay, we're really good. This is our program, and look at the perception. We're a top 10 to 15 program. But for them, that's a drop off, and there's a negative trajectory perception. I don't know if that's reality, but that's the perception out there.
Yeah, I think they know that. I don't know that you get a whole lot of them to talk about it publicly, but it's kind of hard not to know it, right? I mean, it's out there. It's everywhere you look. Back in the spring, I thought there was a little bit of optimism, talking to people around, around that program throughout the summer leading up to fall camp. I've kind of termed what I'm feeling as cautious optimism. You're going into your second year with Garrett Riley. You got a new offensive line coach who has a track record of success and who's known for as a guy that's able to get the job done with wherever he's been at. It would be naive to suggest that some of those guys don't know the narrative surrounding that team, but Dabo's kind of been at his best sometimes when he flies under the radar, when he's perceived as the underdog. He seems to know the exact right buttons to push in those scenarios, and we'll see if he can push them again this year. But it does seem like some of those guys have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and something to prove.
Jason, on the recruiting front, since the last time we talked to you, there is Logan Anderson, there's Bryce Davis, a couple guys that committed at the end of July. Just your thoughts about those gets.
Yeah, 2 months ago, I would have swore Bryce Davis was heading to Georgia. I remember a few weeks before his announcement, I was reading an interview that he did, and he was talking about how Georgia wanted him to play outside linebacker. I don't know. I don't know. They play a little bit different of a scheme as opposed to Clemson, but I don't know if that is something that he really wanted to do. That's just me speculating. But I actually went to Greensboro for his announcement, got to talk to him a couple minutes after he was done, and this is a big time gift for Clemson. And after talking with him for a couple minutes and talking to his dad and his coach, I think culture ended up playing a big factor here. And, everything that Dabo Swinney stands for just kind of resonated with him and his family. I know his dad talked a lot about it when I talked with him. And it kind of adding Davis to this class kind of, at least in a little bit, kind of changes the perception of so many misses throughout the summer. You add a real big one here now that we're at the end of summer. I mean, that gives Clemson like 4 defensive linemen in this class that's ranked inside the top 100. So that's arguably one of the best hauls of defensive linemen in the country. But that's a really strong get. Really, really, it takes some of the sting off of those other losses you suffered throughout the summer. And Logan Anderson. Watched him work out at camp back in June, and man, he killed it. This is a guy that plays both ways at a small high school there in Alabama. I actually talked to him on the phone for a little while the day before yesterday, and he was telling me that he didn't really, the subject of him playing linebacker or defense, let's say defense at the next level, wasn't really broached with him until January of this year. I guess he saw himself playing running back at the collegiate level. That's what he's had a lot of success playing in high school. Again, he plays both ways. He plays all over the field, really. But I think he said it was Jeremy Pruitt who first broached the subject of him playing defense. And I want to say he said playing safety. But I know Wes Goodwin went up there and watched him play in the spring game. And, the versatility was something that really stood out. And this is a guy that can fly, man. You know, when you listen to Wes Goodwin talk about the strength of his defense being speed and athleticism, and that is Logan Anderson to a T. He might not be a guy that's going to help you immediately, but once you get him there and start molding him a little bit, I think he's going to be a really good linebacker for this Clemson defense.
Jason, anybody else out there going to be making an announcement that is connected to Clemson?
You know, Dylan Alford, wide receiver, who he's going to announce today, actually, here in a little while. Today is Friday, just so everybody's clear. A guy that's kind of going back and forth. You know, he was originally committed to Ole Miss. He's visited Clemson a few times now. He visited in the spring, ended up committing to Ole Miss right after that. Then he came to work out at camp, you know, at Clemson back in the summer. It was the only camp he attended. It was the offer he wanted. You know, I mean, he wanted that Clemson offer. He got it. He decommitted from Ole Miss. He immediately makes plans to be at the All-In Cookout last weekend. And then late last week, suddenly, you know, all of a sudden there's a new visit scheduled to Ole Miss right after he goes from Clemson to Ole Miss last weekend. And, you know, we can all talk about what happened, man, you know, but suddenly the trajectory changes and it looks like he's going to Ole Miss. And Clemson will probably sit tight with what they've got in this class at receiver. If I had to guess, I doubt they take another one now. They've got a 4-star in Juju Preston already on board. You got Marquise Henderson, who's probably going to be a slot guy for you. They kind of taking him as an athlete, but he's probably going to play receiver for you. And if you look at the roster, there's nobody on the roster that's currently scheduled to come off scholarship after the season. So, you know, you technically got 2 with nobody officially set to leave after the season. So you got 2 in place to cover any unexpected attrition, so to speak. But, you know, it kind of is what it is. It's kind of been the story of Clemson's summer and on the recruiting trail.
Of course, everyone's excited to see Peter Woods show his talent once again this season and really have a breakout as a dominant player, because that's what he was signed for. But he may be doing that at a slightly different position.
Yeah, you know, Peter Woods is expected to make that move outside the end. You know, Dabo Sweeney talked about that during the spring. He didn't get to play in the spring game because I think it was mono that kept him out, if I'm remembering right. But for whatever reason, we didn't get to see him in the spring game. But, you know, I remember Dabo being asked back in the spring about, you know, his weight and what they'd want him to be, you know, maybe what they wanted him to be at, you know, playing in. And Dabo talked about him losing a little bit of weight. And then he weighs in the other day. He's 319. It's a little bit heavier than he was last year. It kind of, I go back to Wes Goodwin and some of the things he was talking about a couple of weeks ago at Clemson's media day, you know, talking about the wanting to, you know, the multiple looks they want to give up front. I'm wondering if they're not going to play more 3-man front this year. Clemson doesn't have a ton of depth at end. He talked about not only Peter Woods moving outside, he named Trey Williams and Peyton Page by name too as guys we could see move outside. It makes you wonder what the plan is up front, specifically for a guy like Woods, which, you know, it's not a big difference. You know, 319, he's quick as a hiccup. It's not like he can't get out there and do it. I thought it was interesting after Dabo talked about him, you know, maybe slimming down just a little bit, that he came in heavier than he was last year. You know, it makes you wonder what they're going to do outside, particularly, you know, now that Chris Rump's there coaching the defensive ends. So I think Lorenzo Ward might have been working with some of those defensive linemen yesterday too. I can't remember if it was defensive linemen or linebackers, but they got him on the staff now. But it should make for an interesting fall camp and see exactly what the plan is with some of those defensive linemen, because you got TJ Parker coming back at end. But outside of that, there's not a ton of, you know, experienced production returning. You got Cade Denoff, who's been around a little while. But you got some young guys that are really talented. AJ Hoffler, you know, Zaire Patterson, you know, he was up over 250 at the weigh-in. He's a guy that's been around for a while, but it's just, you know, it seems like he kind of been waiting for the light to come on. Maybe he gets there this year. The Jaheim Lawson, Shaq Lawson's little brother. He's a local kid who's been in the program a couple years now. Came in at about, I want to say somewhere around 215, 220 as a freshman. He's up over 215 now. And he's a guy you can use as a pass rusher and on pass rushing downs. They really love his pass rushing ability. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do there at the end and how much Peter Woods actually plays outside there at 319, or if they go with a more 3-man looks as opposed to 4-man looks. Gives you a lot of options, particularly what they got in the back seven, though. Goodwin should be able to go multiple and do multiple things.
Jason Priester, the Clemson Insider. Get on over there. Check out Jason's work and the rest of the staff. Tracking Clemson football every day. This is the time to lock in the season openers coming up in 3+ weeks. Jason, appreciate you being here.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks.